Okay, so today we're going to talk about, so we're going to continue with the lectures, and we're going to talk about things that affect the development of the child. Okay, so we've already gone through like observant mind, planes of development, sensitive period, so you have a good idea about how the child in the early stage is developing. And we also looked at some prophetic methods of education, which is what we did in our last one. But what I want to do today is actually start to look at what things affect or impact the development of a child. And we want to look at this not just from Montessori perspective, but also from an Islamic perspective as well. Okay, so you can see here we have this Montessori learning triangle. Okay, so in the Montessori philosophy, we believe that the child's development is taking place with the dynamic relationship between these three things: the child and the environment, the child and the people and the adults around him, and then the adult with the environment as well. It's a two-way relationship between both. So the child will act on their environment, they will touch their environment, they will explore their environment, and the environment will also give feedback to the child and teach the child and guide the child. Okay, the same thing with the adults. The adults will, the child will interact with them, they'll absorb what they're doing, they will take from them their movements, their personalities, and so on. But the adults will also be trying to impact the development of the child. So it's very much a dynamic relationship. And then at the bottom, we have the adult and we have the environment. And what's going on is this is where the adult is making changes to the environment or preparing the environment so that it's a better learning experience and opportunity for the children. And then also the environment is giving feedback to the parent or the adult or the teacher to so that they are have a better understanding of what the child needs and how to modify the environment for that. So all of these factors have a dynamic relationship and are interconnected to each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this Montessori triangle in a bit more detail so that we can really fully understand how it's working. So the first thing, before I go to that, the first thing is we want to look at the child. Okay, so I thought it would be good for us to open the chat. And can you just, or actually there's just two of you here, so it's fine to just shout it out. Can you just like tell, name a few things that you think influence the child, influence how they learn and develop? But things that are, just a few things that specific to the child that's going to influence how they learn and develop.
The senses?
They will use their senses to develop, but I mean things that are going to influence how they develop or how they learn from their senses.
Materials in the environment.
Yeah, so the environment that they're in. Okay, and the environment includes the people as well, right? Because that's
safe environment. Safe, it's safe environment. Safe.
What I mean is what things. So we said the environment is one thing that's going to impact the development of the child, but what else is there within the child that's going to impact their development?
Their confidence.
Yeah, they're confident.
Fitra.
Sorry?
The fitra.
Their fitra. Yeah, that's lovely. So let's move to the next slide. So from the Islamic perspective, okay, what's written in the Hadith and the Quran about the human being in general is that we have different influences that will affect us. Okay, so the obvious one is the social setting, the environment. Okay, so the environment, the physical environment, like whether we're growing up in the city, whether we're growing up in a more rural environment. For the children who are growing up in Gaza, you can imagine that environment is really affecting their development. And people are also part of the environment as well. So what kind of people they have around them? Are they living in an environment where people are respectful and kind with each other? Or are they living in an environment where things are a bit harsher? Or again, the children in Gaza, their social environment is going to be very, very harsh. So that social environment and physical environment is very much going to influence how the child develops. Okay. Then the first one on here, which is the will and ego, we also know that the personality of the child, the unique personality and way the child is constructed as an individual, that is going to influence them as well. Maybe they're a very sensitive child, or maybe they're a very tough child, or maybe they're a very inquisitive child, right? And I've written it as will and ego, because for us as adults, when we're looking at this part of us, we're really looking at our will and our ego. So the willpower, our determination, the ego that is guiding us or requesting from us, excuse me, Rosie, guiding us or requesting from us, you know, certain things. So this willpower and ego that's within every single child is also going to affect their development. Okay. And then as Muslims, of course, we know that we, as adults, we get whispers from the shaitan or whispers from our lower self. Okay. And those whispers will also affect and influence how we behave and we develop. For the child, we know that when a child is born, we call the adhan in their ears, right? And we know that the shaitan will come to the child and will make them cry. That's what we usually believe in the Islamic faith. So you can imagine that even from the moment of birth, the shaitan is going to the child. And as the child gets older, the shaitan is going to come and try to influence them. And, you know, the young child who's in the unconscious stage, they're not really influenced so much by that. But as the child becomes older and as they begin to really come into their willpower and into their own ego, the shaitan will also be whispering to them, and you will start to see the child do things that, you know, maybe are not as innocent as they were before, right? So these are like 3 factors that we know are going to influence the child. And within these factors, anything else that we mentioned are included within them. So if we talk about their senses, it's to do with the environment that they're in, right? And how they access the environment. If we're talking about their personality, that's to do with the will and the ego. If we're talking about people, that's to do with the social setting, right? So these are kind of like 3 umbrella sections that help us to really think about how the child's development is influenced. So Dr. Montessori, she talks about the children falling into 2 categories for personality. Okay, the child with the strong personality and the child with the weaker personality. Okay, and most people will fall into one of these 2. Okay, so I want you to reflect on yourself as a child and also on your own children as well. Okay, so the child who has a strong character, he resists against any obstacle which is against his fitra. So if they are in a circumstance, whether it's a home environment or a school environment or a social environment, where something is against their fitra, it becomes an obstacle to their development, and then they resist against it. Okay, they will fight against it, and the way that they fight could be through shouting or hitting or having a tantrum or refusing to do something. This strong personality child, the strong-willed child, he will keep fighting if something is not according to their fitra until they're able to overcome it. So this child has a very strong reaction to anything or any obstacle which is against their fitra. Can you hear me well? Because it's raining now. Is it fine? Okay. So in Malaysia, it rains like every day. And when it rains, it just pours. And it's quite noisy. Anyway, so they react very strongly. So if we are to create an environment which is not according to the fitra of the child, and then we are trying to get this child to do things or interact with the environment or learn certain things or engage in certain things that are not according to their fitra, you're going to see this strong reaction come up. Okay. And these are the children who are more likely to hit or to shout or to appear destructive. And they also appear as disobedient. So if you think of like a normal kindergarten school, like grade 1 or kindergarten, and you think about the children who are more likely to, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that worksheet, you know, and throws it on the floor and has this really destructive kind of like behavior. Those are the strong-willed children, okay? Then we have the weak personality. So the child who has the weak personality, when they come up against an obstacle to their fitra, when they come up against something that's not in line with their fitra and their development, this weak personality child, they don't resist much. They might try to resist a little bit, but they give up very easily and they succumb to their circumstances. So these children are the ones that become passive and they build insecurities and they're more likely to cry. So we see that the behavior of these children is that they like to stay close to the adult because they feel insecure and they become very passive. And when we start to impose something on them, which is against their fitra, they will deal with it by crying, feeling insecure, maybe having nightmares. You know, these are the children that are very prone to psychological disturbance in their development. Okay, so this weak personality child, they're not going to fight the wrong things that are happening against their fitra. You know, like you can take, for example, a small child who is in their sensitive period for movement, right? And you stick them in a high chair, okay? And the child wants to move. Their fitra is telling them, move, move, move. But you've strapped them into a high chair or a push chair. You know, sometimes we have those children who will just cry and just sit there, or they'll just be quiet and they'll become passive. And then we also have the other children who are going to scream and be like, get me out of here. And they'll be kicking and they'll be refusing. Okay. So we see these two reactions throughout childhood. And it's important that we recognize who the children are. Because often, so the child with a strong personality is often seen as the difficult one, the naughty one, the one that's causing problems, the one who won't listen, the one who's disobedient. But the reality of the situation is he's not disobedient and he's not difficult. He is resisting what is against his fitra. Whereas we might feel happier with a quiet, passive child who doesn't kick up a fuss, but it's more dangerous because they're not showing us and telling us that what's happening is against their fitra. They're not, the warning bells are not going off, and often these are the children that get missed. They get missed in the young age, whether it's in a school or in a family environment. They get missed because they're not resisting as much. Okay, so I want you to reflect on your own childhood. Which child were you? Were you that strong personality child? or were you that weak personality child? And what kind of experiences did you have because of that? And then how has that affected the way that you come? And I know that it's difficult because there's not many of you and we're on Zoom, but usually when we do this live, everyone starts crying because they reflect on their childhood and they remember things, you know, whether it's the passive one, the weak personality or the strong personality, they remember things about their childhood. Okay. So who would like to go first and share? Which one do you think you were? Were you from the strong personality or the weak personality? And how did that impact you as you were growing and developing? Yes,
I
Rania.
was a quiet child when I was little until I became in high school. Then I rebelled completely.
So
Yeah,
you
but
kept
I
it all
used to be
locked up.
very quiet.
You kept it all locked up.
Yeah,
So when you were young and you were quiet,
yeah.
you know, what used to happen to you? Like things that were against your fitra that used to happen, that you just let happen, that you succumb to. Do you have any examples you can share with
The
us?
system, the school system is like when, for example, when the teacher comes to the classroom, you have to stand up, you know, as a respect. Don't look at her eyes. You always, you know, lower your gaze. Don't look up. There, you feel like humiliated in some way. Like yeah, they put you off. If you make a little mistake, or if you answer the question wrongly, they put you off. They make you feel like no, it's not right, and that's because you don't get it, not because you know it's only blame on me.
So it made you feel like humiliated in a way? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Shamed
yeah,
and humiliated and lack of confidence in yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
when I was in high school, like I rebelled, like everything they told me, you know, I stood up for myself more.
you were saving it to later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, often it's like those weak personality children, you know, often it's like, you know, we don't even notice that they're not happy about something. We don't even notice that they're suffering. That's the
Yeah.
really sad thing, is often we don't
Mm.
even notice the pain that they have or the suffering that they have because they're not being loud about it. They're not giving
Mm.
strong reaction, you know? Like if you
Mm.
have a situation that is not according to fitra and you put two children, the weak one and the strong one, that strong personality child is definitely going to show us that this is not okay.
Mm.
But that weak
Mm.
personality child, they're going to take it inside and they're going to
Yep.
feel the pain inside. And that's
Mm.
why it has more, you know, psychological effect on them. Whereas the strong one, he's let it all out and they get out of the situation, you know?
Yeah,
So,
true, yeah.
so it's important we identify that. And then how about for your children? Can you identify like anyone who are within the strong personality and the weak personality? Do you want to share with us anything about that? Your own children?
I have the third one and the last one. Very strong personality. Very strong. Yeah. But yeah, the first the first child is like an experimental child. Yeah, she's quiet. But she can stood up for herself, but she'd rather like quiet. And the second one as well. But the third one and the last one, very strong. They always stood up for themselves.
Do you have any stories you can share with us about the strong personality child, young one, where maybe there was something that was happening, whether it was at home or in school, which is not according to the fitra of their development, but you only realize later once they kick the bus?
Like recently, my youngest, she goes to public school and there was a note. The kids were, you know, pass it around. And the teacher got her with my daughter and she said, I didn't write it. But when she read it, she read like, teacher blah, blah, blah is gay. And then the teacher was like, oh, this is, you know, you will get suspended. And she was like, why? You always tell us gay is not a problem. Being gay is not a problem. Why you make it such a big deal? You know, she's like, like she said it, you know, she's like, she took their the same sense they talking to her, like she used that against them.
Uh-huh.
She flipped the table against them. Like, you
Good for
always
her.
told us, like, there's nothing wrong of being gay. Why is it a big deal if I wrote it? Even if I wrote this note, there's nothing wrong with it.
Good for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Rania. Fida, how about you? Which child were you when you were young, in your early years? Which child were you?
I feel that I fit into both categories actually.
Uh-huh.
So I sort of knew when not to resist, but then there was times, of resistance where, it just was my way or the highway.
So
So
can you share any examples of that?
So we were latchkey kids, so our parents would go to work and we'd be home alone. And we were not supposed to go out, but I'd say to my older brother, look, it's boring. Let's go see our friends, we'll come back before our parents come home. No, we'll get in trouble. His mindset, no, let's just go, I'd take him. He's older than me, and we'd go visit our friends and come back. That sort of stuff. But in times of, I don't know, like family drama or whatever, I just rather, be quiet and distant and not get involved.
Okay, and how about your children? Do you feel that you've got fallen into
I have 14 children. I believe I've got a mixture.
Sorry, you said you've got 14 children.
Yes, I have 3 boys and 11 girls, inshallah.
Wait, hold on a minute. Your own children. MashaAllah.
Yes.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah. Like definitely I can say my twins, they're number 12 and 13. Like they were much more, of a strong personality. Like I can pick them out, like, immediately from between all the children, because they're just always on the move and, oh no, why should we this and why should we that, and they want to be equals to their older siblings. If they're doing that, then we should be doing that, because that's not justice. And
Okay. Okay, thank you for sharing that.
No.
And I can't see. Is there someone else here?
Aliyah?
Alia, are you here? We can't hear you, Alia. Still
We can't hear you.
I think she's gone offline to maybe rejoin.
Okay. So let's continue. So like I can share, like, my son, for example. Okay. He's has such a strong personality since he was born.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So Alia, maybe reflect on your early years, maybe. So younger, a bit younger. Which kind of personality do you think that you had?
So I think I had, like Fida, like a mix.
Yeah.
I knew when I couldn't resist, and then I knew when I could. That's it was a mix. So I think at the beginning I was more strong, and then I kind of got broken down as I got older.
Yeah.
And I just,
that also tends to happen. It's like nowadays in schools, or depending as well on the parenting style that our parents use. Sorry, that was a cat. It tends to happen that this strong-willed child will eventually get broken down, or or you learn to control your urges. But if you really think about the very young child, so you're talking about a child, let's say below the age of 5, who's not yet learned how to inhibit their urges, right? If you like until the age of 5, if you had that strong personality and it's later that you learn to kind of know when to act and when not to act, then it's most likely being a strong child who's also very clever in terms of how to manage their own behavior. Yeah. And do you have any stories you want to share with us?
No, but I remember like when I was 4, it was on my birthday, and my auntie wanted to wear a dress, and I was like, no, she's not wearing a dress, and I would not allow her to wear a dress to my birthday. But then I remember growing up, as I was growing up, I never said anything if anything bothered me. Like, no matter how much it upset me, I just didn't say anything. Yeah.
And how about your children?
You know what? When you were talking about the strong child, I just became reassured because my 3-year-old has been driving me like crazy with her resistance and, I mean, not listening, doing whatever she wanted. And I was so worried about her, thinking, she's just too much. But now, alhamdulillah, reading all of this, I'm like, okay, we're okay. It's all right. Yeah, but my other kids were so 2 of my kids have a more weak personality, even though I don't like to say weak, but they're more I guess.
Okay, lovely. So let me share about my son. So my son has a very, very strong personality, and from a very, very young age, if I did anything that was not Fitra or not Montessori, immediately there would be he would be vocalizing that this is not right, whether it's through crying or through destructive behavior, or like a lot of people talk about terrible twos, right? And the perspective that we see it in Montessori is actually there's no such thing as terrible twos. Actually, every single time that 2-year-old is playing up, there's a reason behind it, right? There's something going on, there's some obstacle or something that's going on that's causing the child to have that reaction, because the fitra of the child is to be in peace and harmony, actually. So when we see those difficult behaviors come up, then it means there's something impacting it, right? And we need to begin to look at what that is. So my son was mashallah, very, very strong personality. Always let us know when I wasn't doing something right, even if it was something as simple as having letting him wash his own hands. You might have been there when you have your child is like 2 and they want to do everything for themselves, and then you want to wash their hands and they're like, no, that's what we're talking about. Whereas the weaker child will just kind of just let you do it, but actually they still have the urge to do it, but they're just not communicating that and showing. So when we have a strong personality child, often teachers or parents, it's very easy for us to fall into thinking that they're difficult, or thinking of them as a difficult, challenging child. And, although my child was incredibly difficult and challenging, I knew that this strong will is something, if Allah gave it to him, then this is something essential that he must have for the future person that he's going to become. So in the Islamic pedagogy, we don't want to work against that, because if Allah has blessed you with a strong-willed child, there is a very good reason and wisdom behind why he has given that child a strong will. So what we need to do is, when we see that resistance come up, or we see that destructive behavior come up, we need to look at why. try and go to the root of the problem and find out what is happening that is causing this child to feel unsettled. And of course, as the child gets older, and when they finish their early years and they come into primary, of course, part of Islamic education is ta'deeb as well, which we spoke about, right? So of course, we're going to talk to them about the correct way to express. So if you're not happy with something, what's the correct way to express it? It's not about throwing tantrums. We're not saying that it's okay to throw tantrums. No. But we're saying that when we see that behavior, we have to recognize it. And then we have to try and look at the roots of what's coming out. And often it's these strong-willed children who help us make changes for all children, because their resistance is telling us that something is not right. So for example, if you have a classroom where the teacher is very authoritarian and doesn't give the children opportunity for, to express themselves or to be themselves, or or doesn't even respect the child, or whatever it may be, often it's that strong-willed child who is making the noise, and that noise highlights that there's an issue with the teacher, and it highlights it for all the children. Even those weaker personality children, it's highlighting it for them, even if they haven't said anything. And if we as adults take that resistance from the child as a warning to us to look at what's going on that's not right, then inshallah, if we find the issue and we solve it, it becomes beneficial for the strong and the weak child. Okay, so my son is now 19, as I told you. He's almost 20, can't believe it. But like now at the age of 19, 20, he lives on campus. He doesn't live with me. He's studying and everything. And I'm so glad that he has this strong-willed personality, and I'm very glad that he's learned how to manage his will. He still has it, because as a mother, I don't have to fear and worry so much that he is going to follow other people, or people will oppress him and he's not going to take action, or he's not going to say anything, right? And also, a lot of these children who have strong personalities, a lot of them do that, some of them will become leaders. Some of them will have that, whether it's a leader of the family or a leader of whatever it may be, right? So we don't want to break the will of the strong child. We want to give the space and the environment that allows them to have that strong personality, but also to learn the correct adab and boundaries for it. Okay, and then with the weaker personality child, now this is even harder. If we think the strong personality child is hard, it's actually the weak child who's even harder, because they're not showing us when something's not right. So we need to be extra vigilant and observe them, and extra careful to make sure that we, especially in those early years, to make sure that we are working according to their fitra, so that we are not harming them and they're becoming passive to it. So for example, I can't remember what the example I gave for my son was just now, but like, let's say, example, the child who you put in a high chair all day long, the baby you put in a high chair all day long, the weaker personality child, they're not going to they're just going to submit to it. They're going to become passive, but then their development is going to be impacted, because they're not given those opportunities to move and refine their movement. So that's where our job is harder, because we have to become more observant. We have to be more careful about making sure that we are watching carefully and providing an environment that is suitable for the child. Okay. Any questions on that, or should we go on? Yeah, move on. Okay. So another important part of this whole journey of this weak child and strong child, and the influences, the personal influences that impact the child's development, is also learning the ability to know how to make the right choices. Okay, so if you think about everything that you do in life, from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep, you are constantly making choices, right? You're making choices about whether you wake up early or whether you're going to click snooze, whether you're going to approach the day with shukr and openness and happiness, or whether you're just going to rush through the day, you know, the way that we will talk to our family, our children, our spouses, our colleagues at work, whatever it may be. We're always constantly making choices about how we're going to be and how we're going to behave, right? A big part of being an adult human being is making choices. So therefore, the young child, part of their development is developing the ability of making right choices. And this ties in really beautifully with the concept of the purpose of our life here on this, in this alam dunya. So if we think of the alam dunya, our purpose is to worship Allah, to come to know Allah, to worship Allah, to do the things that please Him, to keep away from the things that displease Him. That's our purpose and work here, right? And along that comes choice. So we are tested in this dunya because we are given choice. We're given the choice whether we want to worship Allah or don't worship Allah. If we want to thank Allah, if we don't want to thank Allah. And part of the child's development from birth is developing this ability to make the right choices. In fact, in everything that I've gone through in education, I would say supporting the development of choice making is one of the most essential tools and gifts that we need to be giving our children. And actually, when you look at the school system, they don't even give the children choice. They don't even give space for choices. And, you know, and then if you look at the modern day parenting, we will have like the passive parents that just let children make all sorts of choices without guidelines or guidance. And sometimes the choices are things that are way out of the child's ability, and it's not really reasonable for the child to be given that choice. And sometimes, and then we also have the parents who are very, very restrictive, and they don't give the child opportunity to make choices, right? What we have to create as Muslims is we have to create an environment that allows the child the opportunity to make just as many choices as they can be responsible for. So the young child who's maybe 1.5 to 2, what kind of choices can they make? They can choose, you know, whether they want to wear their red shoes or their blue shoes, or whether they want to put their t-shirt on first or they want to put their trousers on first, or if they want to have waffles for breakfast or egg for breakfast, right? We can give them these small choices, but the choices are within our choice. So in effect, we've already chosen for them, but we've given them 2 options that we've chosen, and then we allow them to choose from those 2 options. As the child develops and becomes older and has a deeper understanding and more maturity and more responsibility, then we start to widen their pool of choices, right? So a child who, let's say, is 4 or 5, you know, we might just say to them, you know, do you want to go choose a t-shirt to put on? We're not going to say, do you want the red t-shirt or the blue t-shirt? We'll just say, do you want to choose a t-shirt, right? Also, the choices will become, you know, not the very young child, the choices are very much about their daily activity. They're getting dressed, they're eating, and so on. But as a child gets older, the choices become more, you know, more dynamic. It'll be about, you know, who they want to make friends with, or who they want to, you know, what they want to learn and don't learn, and so on. But the idea here is that really supporting that development of choice in children is essential to ensure the full development of the human being. Because in the end, we need the child to grow into a human being who's able to make the choice to lead their life in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and keep away from the things that does not please him. Those are the ultimate choices we want the children to make later on. But for them to make that choice, they have to be exercising their mechanisms for making choices according to each level and stage of their development. So if the child is in a very restrictive environment, and we've seen this, I've seen this in so many families, the child is very sheltered, too sheltered, and they're not given opportunity to make choices, and they're kept, everything is really restrictive. And then as soon as the child hits the teen years and they feel that they can be who they want to be and you can't tell them anymore, often we see those children will rebel and let loose, and they will make their own choices. But because they don't have that, they have not exercised and developed the mechanism of making good choices, because they haven't developed that mechanism, often they will end up making choices that are not so great, right? Whereas a child, and then we have the opposite. We have children who from a very young age, they don't have any restriction and they have total freedom. And those children are just total freedom to make any choice that they want to make, even if they're not even ready to make that choice yet. For example, oh yeah, I forgot. I have to be careful because you guys are in Australia, so I can't give them the example that we used. But I'd just say there's, the agenda that goes on nowadays that's quite strong. Where children are even get to choose whether they want to, their gender or whatever it is. So you have these tiny children who are not ready and they're not capable of making choices, but they're being given the freedom to make these big choices that affect their life. Okay, that's not prophetic to give choices that are beyond the child's capability. The prophetic way is to only give as much as the child can take. And as the child grows in their knowledge and understanding and maturity and responsibility, then we increase their opportunity for choices. Okay, so when children have been given this total freedom and they can make any choice that they want to make, often the result is that the child will make many, many errors along the way. And sadly, sometimes those errors are going to affect them or affect others around them negatively. And they don't necessarily see the feedback of the choices that they make. Because every choice that a child makes gives them feedback. This is another important thing, is if the child makes a choice and it's a wrong choice, how do they learn if it's a wrong choice or not? How can the child learn that that choice is wrong? It's according to the feedback that comes back. So let's say a child, we give them it's raining outside, and they choose to wear their sandals instead of their Wellingtons or something. And they wear their sandals and they go out and it's raining. What's going to happen? What's the feedback they get? The feedback that they get is that their feet are going to get wet. So the child now learns next time to modify their choice. So when they make a choice, each time they make a choice, they're getting feedback from their environment or from the their surroundings, and that helps them to modify their choices for the future. But if we're sheltering the child from, we give them full choice of everything, and then when they make a mistake, we don't allow them to go through that feedback, and we stop them from going through that feedback, then how will they learn whether their choice was right or wrong? And we see that with many nowadays, many families that, their child might, let's say, for example, the child might, the child might steal something. And then the parents will defend the child and be like, no, the child didn't take it. The child this, the child that. We see so many times where the parents come in and they're so quick to defend the child. They don't let the child live the consequence. And then what happens is that, sorry, 1 second. Oh dear. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, that was a little bit of an emergency. Sorry, she was just, one of my cats was trying to jump out the window. It was a bit of an emergency, but alhamdulillah, I've got her. Okay, so so we're saying that, like, if we shelter the child and we don't allow them to experience that feedback, then what's going to happen is the child is not going to learn how to modify their choice in the future. So if a child was mean to another child, but then we don't address it and help them to go through that feedback, then what happens is, how is the child going to be able to modify their choice in the future? So that's why it's really important that we have the middle way, which is giving the children just as much opportunity for choice as they can be successful for, and according to their wisdom, their responsibility, and their knowledge at that point of time. And we increase it as the child becomes more and more responsible. And the consequence of that, the result will be that the child, as they emerge into their teenage years or their adulthood years, they will not feel restricted, and they will not feel that there's no limit. They will have a clear boundary, and they will start to make really good choices. So this is something that I've, like, you know, been researching quite a lot, and it's something that I'm really, like, interested in, is how do we support children in making the right choices, and also the impact that it has on them in their future. Fida, do you want to ask a question?
No, I just want to say, like, there's the parents who want to give their children a better childhood than they had, so they just there's no boundaries. They just allow their child, they just buy them things, for no reason except because they were deprived younger, whatever. And I feel that plays a role in who the child becomes also.
Yes, definitely it does. It does, definitely. And it definitely does. And that's why, like, one of the big take backs that we should always take from Islamic pedagogy is that it's always about the balanced way. Like we said, the Prophet was firm but kind, freedom but within limits. Yeah, we give them, as you know, of course we want our children to be happy and enjoy their childhood, but it's also within limits. We're not going to forget that childhood is this important, childhood is a really important childhood is a really important period for developing the person who you're going to become. So even within the enjoyment, we still have to keep that firm boundary of, this is also this is also your time to develop into the best person that you can be, right? So when parents just
I think the aqidah from, when the children are young is what will help them when they're older, like, to realize, okay, my parents were doing the best they could, during their time, of them raising me. Now I'm here, I'm older, I'm wiser, like, I can do better. I feel that's why our ummah is the way it is. Parents are trying to bring their children up to have a better life.
They're trying to
without really compensate the life they didn't have, but it's totally taking kids off track.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we have to remember, is it their childhood or our childhood? Because a lot of people are reliving their childhood through their children, and then they miss the point that their child needs to develop themselves into this fully functioning human being. They're missing it. They're just reliving everything that they wish they had when they were younger. They're reliving it through their children, right? Rana, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say something because I have 5 kids and they all have different personality. And sometimes I think, how come they all have different personality? I raised them all the same. But I figured out at the end, like, I think that I raised them all the same, but it's them, because they're different, they force you to change your way with each one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But also adding on that, Ronya, it's whatever you had going on in that period of your life, you know, and that helps influence the way you raise them during that time. So you're not going to have the same periods of
So,
time
yeah,
with each child, and
true.
that's why each child
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
different.
true.
And,
Yeah,
and
true.
yeah, and if you go to the baseline of the child, so when we're talking about the baseline, we're talking about the personality of the child. If you strip away our influences, strip away the environmental influences, strip away all of that, they still have a fitra that's unique to them that Allah gave them. So Allah will give each child their own uniqueness, right? And that is like, you know, a child who is weaker, that's from Allah, and He has wisdom for that. You know, a child who's stronger, that's again from Allah, and wisdom from that. And we, even amongst twins who are given the exact same food and clothes and everything and love and everything, you will see differences in their personality, right? So that's also something that a wisdom that comes from Allah. And for us as educators and parents, I really believe that we have to accept that Allah is, there is a wisdom behind His making of each individual child and adult around us. There's a wisdom behind it. We are not the ones to judge and shape because we don't have that wisdom. So we need to accept those children as they are. And then we need to look at what's our role and what do we do to support and facilitate for this child in their developmental process to become the best version of themselves. So they're not becoming the best version of us or the best version of each other, but the best version of their unique self according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed for them. That's what we really, you know, we really need to start. So that means we accept how Allah creates each child. We accept the differences in each child, but we use the prophetic teachings as our guideline. So when we see any behavior or any development that is off of the prophetic guidance, away from what we've been told by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and in the Quran about how a human being should be, then we're always there to help the child come back. Because the fitra of the child, every single child, the fitra of their fitra is unique and pure. So anything that we see that is not prophetic is off their fitra. Yeah. So that you know, these are all really important and interesting discussions, because often when we step into a classroom, we're not thinking about the children in this way. But this is the nature of how Allah designed the human being. It's the nature of how Allah designed the child. And we really need to be ready to see the children for who they are, accept them for who they are, and then know how we can support them to continue their development in the best way possible. Okay. And then, okay. We'll just do this slide. Yeah. Because it's already 6:35. I think 9:35 for you guys. Okay. So, so regarding making choices are linked to our interests and our willpower. So the choices we make will always come out of our own will or our own interests. And we are always making choices every moment of the day. So when a child makes a choice, that signifies to us something about their interest or their willpower. Okay. So like we said, the child needs to develop this ability or mechanism to make the right choices. And we start this from the young age. I think I spoke about all this already, but you know, we start this from the youngest age, even from birth. Okay. By giving them the opportunity to make choices even if it's making mistakes, so that they can learn from that and learn from the feedback that comes from the choices that they make. As you know, in order to make good choices, the child has to have knowledge. Knowledge is what guides our choices. So as the child gains more and more knowledge about their environment, about life, about you know, everything, then they are given the opportunity to make more choices, because now then choices are governed by knowledge. And also that the child needs an environment that allows them to make choices and allows them to make mistakes sometimes. Because through their mistakes, they will learn to self-correct. Okay, so one of the things in Montessori education, which is really important concept, is that we allow children to make mistakes and self-correct themselves according to their mistakes, because often making mistakes are the biggest opportunities for learning for us. So we don't shy away from giving the child opportunity. Like if we know the child is going to put on their sandals and go out in the rain and their socks are going to get wet, we let them make that mistake, because it's through making mistake that you get feedback. And when you get feedback, you modify your choices. But if we have an environment that doesn't allow the child to make any mistake, then the result of that is that the child, when they're older, they'll start to make mistakes, because they're still going to have to go through that process of making mistakes, but they'll do it when they're older. And often the mistakes that they make in their teenage years or their young adult years, often those mistakes are much, much more serious and difficult to overcome. Whereas for the small child who puts on sandals, goes out in the rain, gets their socks wet, that's a very simple mistake that they can correct themselves. Okay. So there is an activity which is to reflect on your life and to reflect as a child or even an adult of a mistake that you made, a wrong choice that you made, but it ended up being one of the best lessons that you learned from. But we won't talk about that now, because I think we've gone on for too long. We'll save that for, we'll start the next session with this, inshallah. Okay. Any questions before we end? No? Thank you so much for joining today. And I hope, inshallah, it was beneficial. And I look forward, inshallah, to seeing, I think we're going to have like 2 more sessions. Yeah. So hopefully we won't go on for too long. Inshallah, we'll have 2 more sessions, but I hope, inshallah, it's been beneficial. And take care. Good night. And inshallah, see you next week.
Jazakallah.